Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Tonight, I've got two terrifying stories that'll make you rethink your next dog-sitting gig or walk in the woods. In the first story, a peaceful weekend with a dog takes a horrifying turn when the dog starts acting strangely, staring at something in the dark, something the owner can't see. In the second, a simple walk through the woods turns into a nightmare when a dog goes missing, and something sinister begins to stalk its owner. But here's the real question. What was lurking in the shadows, waiting for its moment? Could the animals sense something we couldn't? What happened to the missing dog? And what was watching from the dark woods? Stick around for these chilling encounters, and drop a comment below if you've ever experienced something you couldn't explain, or if your pet has ever acted in a way that just didn't sit right. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you want more spine-chilling stories. It was supposed to be a typical weekend. I was just a college student looking for a break from my cramped apartment in New York City when my old friend, Brad Davis, asked me to house sit while his family took a weekend getaway. Brad was wealthy, living in a massive home on Long Island, and the thought of lounging in his luxury house with nothing to do but take care of his dog sounded like a dream. The dog, Daisy, was a small Havanese. She was sweet, calm, and low-maintenance, perfect for a weekend watch. Brad told me to treat the place like my own, offering me extra cash for the favor. Little did I know, this weekend would be anything but peaceful. The house was a sprawling mansion, with high ceilings and empty spaces that echoed even the slightest sound. As I settled in, Daisy followed me everywhere. At first, it was comforting. I'd feed her, take her out to the backyard, and we'd hang out together, just me and the little dog in this massive house. That night, as I sat on the couch in the grand living room, watching television, Daisy lay on the floor beside me, her tiny body curled up peacefully. But then, without warning, she lifted her head. Her eyes, usually soft and playful, were now fixed, locked onto something in the dark, far down the hall. My gut tightened. I followed her gaze. The hallway was quiet, eerily silent, but something about the space at the far end, the dark, unwelcoming door leading to the basement, felt wrong. Daisy's eyes never left it. A cold shiver ran down my spine. I shook it off. It's just a dog being a dog, I told myself. But Daisy didn't look away. Instead, she began growling low, menacing growls that sent a chill straight to my bones. I grabbed the remote, trying to focus on the television, but the sound of her growls was impossible to ignore. I turned off the television and slowly stood up, cautiously moving toward the hall. The house was too quiet. Even the air felt still, like the world was holding its breath. My heart was pounding in my chest. I wanted to laugh it off, but the deeper instinct inside me wouldn't let me. There was something watching, something I couldn't see. I looked back at Daisy. Her body was stiff now, every muscle tense, staring at that door like it held something worse than her worst nightmare. It's just your imagination, I told myself, but the voice in my head wasn't buying it. I wasn't ready to find out what was really in the dark corner of that house. I took a deep breath, trying to shake the unease crawling up my spine. I walked toward the hallway, Daisy trailing behind me, her small paws patting softly on the hardwood floors. As I approached the basement door, I could feel the temperature drop, as if the house itself had suddenly turned cold. The hallway seemed to stretch on forever, the dark, oppressive atmosphere thickening with each step. I reached the door and stopped. It was slightly ajar, just enough for me to see the sliver of darkness behind it. Daisy's growls had stopped, but her eyes were still locked onto the opening. The silence was suffocating, my heart hammering in my chest as I reached for the door handle. Suddenly, the air shifted. A faint sound of soft rustling came from the basement, followed by the unmistakable creak of floorboards. My breath caught in my throat. I froze, unable to move. The noise came again, closer this time, like something or someone was moving in the darkness below. I didn't know what to do. My hand trembled as I gripped the handle tighter, but I couldn't bring myself to open the door. I glanced down at Daisy, who was now pacing back and forth, whimpering softly. It was as if she knew something I didn't, something far worse than I could have ever imagined. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up as I realized something. We weren't alone in this house, and whatever was down there, in that basement, was very much aware of us. The silence was deafening. I stood there, frozen in place, my hand still gripping the doorknob as Daisy's frantic pacing around me became more desperate. The air in the hallway felt thick, suffocating, like it was closing in around me. I glanced over at Daisy, her small body trembling, her eyes wide with terror. Then, without warning, the basement door creaked open just a little more, as if something was pushing it from the other side. My pulse raced, and I instinctively stepped back. That was enough. I wasn't going down there not without knowing what I was walking into. I turned to leave, but before I could make it more than a few steps, Daisy suddenly bolted down the hallway, her tiny legs moving faster than I could react. I called her name in a panic, but she was already disappearing around the corner, heading straight for the stairs leading to the second floor. I chased after her, my heart pounding in my chest, fear surging through my veins. When I reached the top of the stairs, Daisy was already sitting outside the guest bedroom door, her body stiff and alert. Her eyes never left the cracked door. I stepped closer, my mind racing, and that's when I saw it, the faint outline of something moving inside the room. A shadow, slow and deliberate, as if it knew I was there. I hesitated for a moment, the weight of the situation crushing me. But there was no turning back. I had to face whatever was lurking in that room. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my nerves, but my hands were shaking. Daisy was still staring at the cracked door, her body rigid, eyes locked on something inside. Her soft whimpering made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. The house felt alive in that moment, like it was holding its breath, waiting for me to make a move. I took one hesitant step forward. The floor creaked beneath my weight, and I froze. The shadow inside the room shifted again, moving closer to the door. My stomach twisted in knots as I realized it knew I was here. I pushed the door open, just enough to peek inside. The room was dark, only a sliver of moonlight creeping through the curtains, casting long shadows across the floor. But then, in the dim light, I saw the shape. Something was standing near the corner of the room, tall and thin, almost blending into the shadows. It wasn't a person. I could feel it in my bones. The air around it felt wrong, thick with a heaviness I couldn't explain. My heart pounded in my chest as I tried to make sense of what I was seeing. Daisy let out a low growl, breaking the silence, and that's when I saw eye to eye. A cold, hollow eye staring back at me from the darkness. It wasn't human, but something about it made every part of me scream in terror. I slammed the door shut, stumbling backward. My breathing was shallow, and I could barely hold myself together. There was something in that room, something that wasn't supposed to be there, and I had no idea how to stop it. My mind was racing as I stumbled back from the door, my heart thundering in my chest. I could still feel the weight of that eye on me, burning into my soul even though I'd closed the door. Daisy was shaking, whimpering softly as she paced in tight circles around me. I wanted to run, but my legs felt like they were made of stone, too heavy to move. I kept my back to the door, desperately trying to regain some composure. The house was too quiet now, no sound, no movement. It was as if the entire world was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. I glanced at Daisy, her tiny body trembling, and I knew I wasn't imagining things. Whatever was in that room wasn't something I could explain. The sudden creak of floorboards behind me sent a shock of ice through my veins. I spun around, my breath caught in my throat. But there was nothing there, just the long hallway stretching into the dark. Then, from the corner of my eye, I saw it again. The shadow. It was moving, sliding across the floor, coming closer. I backed up toward the stairs, my feet stumbling over each other. The air was thick with dread, my pulse racing faster than I thought possible. Daisy let out a soft, mournful whine and darted past me, running down the stairs. I didn't think I'd just follow, but as I reached the first step, a voice, cold and hollow, whispered from the dark. "You can't escape." I didn't look back. I couldn't. I ran. I bolted down the stairs, my legs burning with each desperate step. Daisy was ahead of me, her small form a blur as she dashed for the front door. My heart pounded in my chest, each beat ringing in my ears. That voice, the whisper from the dark, it echoed in my mind, a chilling reminder that whatever was in the house wasn't just a figment of my imagination. It was real. I reached the door, but my hands were shaking so violently I could barely get a grip on the handle. I yanked it open and stumbled out into the cold night air, gasping for breath as if the house had been suffocating me. Daisy was already out on the porch, her fur standing on end, eyes darting around like she was expecting something to emerge from the darkness. The wind howled around me, but all I could hear was the thumping of my heart and the rapid pace of my breath. I didn't stop to look back. I ran down the steps and into the yard, my eyes fixed on the empty street beyond, willing myself to get as far away from that house as possible. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911, my voice shaky as I told the operator everything I'd experienced. When the police arrived, they searched the entire house, top to bottom. They found nothing. No sign of anyone lurking in the shadows. No trace of whatever had been there. But when they checked the basement, that's when I saw it. A small hidden door in the far corner, sealed shut with rusted nails. It wasn't there before. Daisy saved my life that night, and I'll never forget what she kept staring at. It was supposed to be a simple favor. I was home from college in Michigan, looking for a quiet weekend to escape the stress of exams and papers. My friend Danny Mitchell, a carpenter, asked me to look after his dog, Chester, while he was out of town. His house sat on the edge of the woods, far from the nearest neighbor. The air was cold, and Bitingit was a typical Michigan winter. But I didn't mind. It would be a peaceful time, I thought. Chester, a scruffy mutt with boundless energy, was used to running free in the huge yard. But with no fence, Danny asked me to take him for a walk every day. The house was still when Danny left, and I found myself alone in the quiet, darkened space. I figured a quick walk would be easy, just get it over with. But I should have known that even the simplest things could turn terrifying. I attached the leash to Chester's collar and stepped outside. The cold immediately hit me like a slap in the face, but I pushed forward. Chester tugged on the leash, pulling me toward the woods at the edge of the property. I tried to slow him down, but he was determined, his nose twitching as he sniffed at the snow-covered ground. I had barely taken a few steps into the trees when Chester suddenly stopped. His head whipped around, ears perked, his body tense. I followed his gaze into the woods ahead. It was darker there, the trees thick and heavy with snow. Everything was still, too still. "Come on, Chester," I said, pulling lightly on the leash. But he refused to move. Instead, he started barking. At first, it was a single, deep bark, but then it escalated into frantic, high-pitched yelps. His eyes were wild, scanning the darkness. "Chester, what the hell's wrong with you?" I muttered, trying to pull him away. But he wasn't budging. The barking grew louder, his body quivering as if he were fighting some invisible force. I thought maybe it was a deer or another animal, but something about the intensity of his reaction sent a wave of unease through me. I felt the hairs on the back of my neck stand up, the chill of the air suddenly sharper against my skin. And then, out of nowhere, Chester broke free. The leash snapped in an instant, and in the blink of an eye, he was gone, charging into the woods, disappearing into the snow-covered trees. I called his name, panic creeping into my voice, but it was no use. His barks faded into the distance, swallowed by the dark forest. I didn't think twice. I ran after him, stumbling through the snow, my breath coming out in heavy clouds. "Chester!" I yelled, but it felt like the woods were swallowing my words. Every step I took felt like it was dragging me deeper into something I couldn't escape from. I was losing him. I was losing my way. The woods around me seemed to close in, the trees twisting in ways that didn't seem right. My heart pounded faster, a rhythm of terror, as I desperately tried to catch up. The sound of Chester's barks had stopped, replaced by a terrifying silence. The kind of silence that makes your skin crawl, where every sound, even your own footsteps, feels too loud. And then, I heard it. Footsteps. Not the quick, light pads of Chester's paws. These were slow, heavy, deliberate. They were circling me. I stopped dead in my tracks, my breath caught in my throat. The footsteps were getting closer. I turned off my flashlight. The darkness felt oppressive, like something was watching me from the shadows. My eyes darted around, but there was nothing, just the sound of my own panicked breathing and the crunch of snow beneath my boots. Then I heard a rustle in the trees. Something moved, just out of sight. A shadow. I wasn't alone. The footsteps were getting closer, each one slow and deliberate, like they were toying with me. I stood frozen in place, straining to hear anything, but all I could focus on was the pounding of my own heart in my chest. The air felt thick, as if the entire forest was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. I glanced around desperately, trying to make sense of the darkness. The moonlight barely pierced through the thick trees, casting long, twisted shadows across the snow. I was utterly alone, and whatever was out there seemed to know it. Suddenly, a branch snapped somewhere to my left, and my heart leaped into my throat. I spun around, but there was nothing there, just the blackness of the forest swallowing every trace of movement. I took a few steps back, instinctively moving toward the direction of the road, but my legs felt heavier with each step, the cold seeping into my bones. Then I heard Chester's bark, faint and distant, but unmistakable. It wasn't frantic anymore. It was different. It was almost a whimper, a cry of pain. Without thinking, I sprinted in the direction of the sound. My breath came in short, sharp gasps, the fear now a tight knot in my chest. I pushed through the thick underbrush, the snow crunching beneath my boots. My mind was racing. What could be happening to him? But then, just as suddenly as the barking had started, it stopped, and that silence, it was worse than the noise. I felt my stomach drop. Something was wrong. Chester didn't stop barking unless... A movement ahead. I caught a glimpse of something or someone flicker between the trees. It wasn't Chester. Number. This was something else. Something mutter. I slowed down, my pulse racing. A figure stood motionless in the distance, its shape outlined in the moonlight. And then, it turned and vanished into the woods. My breath was coming in ragged gasps, each one a puff of white against the cold night air. I stood still, staring at the spot where the figure had vanished, my heart pounding in my chest. What the hell was that? It wasn't Chester, I knew that much. The figure had been tall, human-shaped, but the way it moved too fluid, too unnatural. And the way it disappeared into the woods, without a trace, that was no person. I took a cautious step forward, my legs unsteady beneath me, but my curiosity, the desperate need to find Chester, pushed me onward. I tried calling his name again, my voice barely above a whisper, as if speaking any louder would draw whatever was lurking out of the darkness. "Chester," I called, my voice cracking with the strain. "Chester, come here." The forest was deathly silent now. No wind, no animal noises, just the crunch of snow beneath my boots and the pounding of my heart in my ears. Then, I heard something, a soft rustling, like something moving through the trees. I froze. It was coming from the direction the figure had gone. Slowly, I turned, trying to pinpoint where it was coming from. The rustling was almost rhythmic, deliberate. I started walking again, but this time more cautiously. Every step felt heavier, the air thicker, as if the forest itself was closing in on me. The moonlight barely penetrated the dense canopy above, and every shadow seemed to shift and twitch. And then I saw a dark figure moving between the trees, not far ahead. It wasn't Chester. This was something much larger. Something that wasn't supposed to be in the woods at all. I stopped, my breath caught in my throat. The figure paused and turned slowly, its eyes glinting in the darkness. I didn't move. I couldn't. My body was frozen, trapped in the gaze of whatever was watching me. It didn't make a sound. It just stood there. And then, in a blink, it was gone and vanished into the shadows once more. I stood there, rooted to the spot, my pulse hammering in my ears. The forest was suffocatingly still, as if holding its breath. I couldn't move, couldn't tear my eyes away from where the figure had disappeared into the shadows. Every inch of me screamed to run, but I could not without Chester. I called out again, my voice now desperate. "Chester!" I shouted, louder this time, my throat raw with fear. There was no answer. Only the whisper of the wind through the trees, the soft crunch of snow beneath my boots. I took another step forward, my legs shaking beneath me. Each step felt heavier, as though the woods themselves were pulling me deeper into their cold, dark embrace. But I had no choice. I had to find Chester. The woods seemed to stretch on forever, the darkness closing in around me, and the more I walked, the more disoriented I became. It felt like I was walking in circles, but I couldn't tell. The trees all looked the same, their branches twisted and gnarled in the dim light. Then, suddenly, a noise broke the silence. A bark. It was faint at first, barely audible, but it was unmistakable. Chester. I bolted toward the sound, my heart racing. "Chester! I'm coming!" I called, my voice shaky. But the barking stopped abruptly, replaced by an eerie silence. I pushed through the underbrush, my breath coming in ragged gasps, when I saw it. Up ahead, through the trees, there was a faint glow. The eerie light of something glowing in the dark, flickering like a distant campfire. But as I neared, the glow flickered out. That's when I saw it. Chester, lying motionless in the snow. But something was wrong. His eyes were wide open, his body stiff, and standing over him, in the shadows, was the figure. My heart stopped as I saw Chester lying motionless in the snow, his eyes wide open, staring into the empty night. My breath hitched, and I could feel my stomach twist in fear. I rushed toward him, not daring to take my eyes off the figure standing above him, its shadow stretching unnaturally long in the dim light. "Chester!" I yelled, my voice cracking with panic. But there was no response, no movement. My hands trembled as I reached down to check his pulse. Nothing. He was cold, too cold, like the life had been drained from him. The figure didn't move. It just stood there, watching. And then, slowly, it tilted its head, as if studying me. I froze, the blood draining from my face. The eyes, their unnatural gleam, stared straight through me. There was something wrong with those eyes. They weren't human. I felt the weight of its gaze, as if it was pushing me down, paralyzing me where I stood. The air around me grew thick, suffocating. I tried to back away, but my legs felt like lead. The figure took a step forward, and my body finally responded. My instincts kicked in, and I turned, running, not daring to look back. I heard the rustling of branches behind me, but I didn't stop. My legs burned as I sprinted through the trees, dodging branches, desperate to escape. I had to get out. I had to leave before whatever that thing was caught up with me. I stumbled, almost falling, but kept running, blindly crashing through the underbrush. The forest seemed endless, and the darkness felt like it was closing in on me. Then I saw the clearing ahead, the edge of the woods, and the distant glow of lights from the house. My lungs burned with every breath, but I pushed forward. Just a little more, I thought. Just a little more. But then I heard it. The voice. "You can't escape." I didn't dare look back. I just ran. Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Tonight, I've got two terrifying stories that'll make you rethink your next dog-sitting gig or walk in the woods. In the first story, a peaceful weekend with a dog takes a horrifying turn when the dog starts acting strangely, staring at something in the dark, something the owner can't see. In the second, a simple walk through the woods turns into a nightmare when a dog goes missing, and something sinister begins to stalk its owner. But here's the real question. What was lurking in the shadows, waiting for its moment? Could the animals sense something we couldn't? What happened to the missing dog? And what was watching from the dark woods? Stick around for these chilling encounters, and drop a comment below if you've ever experienced something you couldn't explain, or if your pet has ever acted in a way that just didn't sit right. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you want more spine-chilling stories.